Ever bought Bitcoin?
Of course you have.
That's why you're here.
But here's a question I bet you haven't considered. What currency did you actually USE to buy it?
It's like this hidden layer of the whole Bitcoin world.
That most of us never even think about.
Well, today's deep dive is taking us right into that hidden layer. We're dissecting this article.
Top fiat currencies used to trade Bitcoin.
Get ready for some serious aha moments right off the bat.
The article breaks down the types of people buying Bitcoin.
Yeah.
The speculators just chasing a quick buck.
And the true believers who think it's the future of money.
Right.
You know.
The classic crypto divide.
What's interesting is how the article goes beyond that simple divide. It points out that even those speculators, just by making trades, impact how useful Bitcoin can actually be as a currency. That's a connection I hadn't fully grasped before.
Okay, unpack that for me. How do speculators affect whether or not Bitcoin can actually buy me a cup of coffee someday?
Think about it. If the price of Bitcoin is swinging wildly every day, who's going to use it to price everyday goods? Imagine trying to figure out if that coffee should cost 0.00005 Bitcoin or 0.000008 Bitcoin while you're waiting in line. It becomes too chaotic for everyday use.
So even if I'm not a speculator,
Their actions affect the stability of Bitcoin.
which then impacts whether or not that cashier will actually accept it from me.
That's wild.
Speaking of impacting the market,
Let's get to those top currencies the article dives into.
it feels like we're about to get a global economic power ranking here.
Hit me with number one.
All right, no surprise here. It's the US dollar, clocking in at a massive 83.67% of the market share.
I guess that makes sense,
The US seems to always be at the center of things.
especially financial stuff.
Right, and their early adoption of Bitcoin is a big factor, but it also highlights the dollar's role as the world's reserve currency. When people lack confidence in their own currency, they often turn to the US dollar for stability, and that behavior seemed to carry over into the crypto world.
It's like Bitcoin is just plugged into the existing financial system.
Even though it's supposed to be this whole new thing.
Okay,
So who's challenging the dollar's dominance?
give me number two.
Coming in at a respectable 6.15% is the Japanese yen. Now, this is where things get interesting. The article mentions that Japan actually benefited from China's crackdown on Bitcoin.
I gotta admit,
I didn't see that one coming.
it shows how government policies can have huge ripple effects. China essentially pushed Bitcoin activity to other countries, and Japan, with its more open approach to crypto, was ready to reap the benefits. Fascinating how these things play out.
It's like a game of financial whack-a-mole. You try to push Bitcoin down in one place and it pops up somewhere else. So who's next in line for the Bitcoin throne?
Neck and neck with the yen.
We've got the South Korean won at 6.14%.
And this one has a twist.
Apparently, South Korea tried to get a tighter grip on Bitcoin trading, but requiring everyone to use real-name bank accounts, no more anonymity.
It's a balancing act a lot of countries are struggling with. How to encourage innovation without letting things descend into chaos. South Korea was trying to prevent illegal activities without stifling the tech. It's a tough needle to thread.
It's a good reminder that this isn't just about numbers and trading. There are real-world consequences to how governments choose to handle Bitcoin. All right, time for our final contender, who's rounding out the top four.
Holding steady at 1.85% is the Eurozone's euro.
Now,
This one surprised me a bit.
you'd think with all the tech-savvy folks in Europe,
The euro would be a bigger player in the Bitcoin game.
and this is where things get really interesting. Just being located in a region with a lot of Bitcoin enthusiasts isn't enough. The euro's performance suggests that regulatory clarity, existing financial systems, and even a country's overall attitude toward crypto all play a role. It's a complex.
It's like Bitcoin throws a spotlight on how different countries approach risk, innovation, even their philosophy on money itself.
But you know what's even more interesting? There's a huge elephant in the room.
Or rather,
A dragon.
missing from this list.
Because one name that you'd expect to see in the top four is completely absent. The Chinese yuan.
And the article says it used to dominate Bitcoin trading.
Yeah.
0%.
How did such a powerhouse become a total non-factor?
Well, China's journey with Bitcoin has been a wild ride.
To say the least.
They went from being early adopters with the yuan dominating the trading scene to implementing a complete crackdown.
Talk about a plot twist.
It's like they slammed the brakes on the Bitcoin Express.
Well, why? What was behind such a drastic move?
Control.
It seems like the Chinese government wasn't comfortable with the lack of control they had over Bitcoin.
Its decentralized nature.
The potential for use in activities they couldn't monitor.
It all clashed with their desire to manage their financial system with a tight grip. It's like Bitcoin presented a challenge to their authority,
And they weren't having it.
which is ironic.
Because the article mentions that when the yuan was devalued back in 2014, 2015,
Bitcoin trading in China actually surged.
it's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? It's almost like by trying to exert more control and limit access to Bitcoin, they inadvertently created more incentive for people to use it. When
Yeah.
people lose faith in their traditional currency, they look for alternatives. And Bitcoin, with its limited supply and decentralized nature, seems to fit the bill for some.
It's like a financial catch-22. The more they tried to restrict it, the more attractive it became to people seeking stability outside the traditional system. That's wild. All this talk about people buying Bitcoin with different currencies has me wondering, does the article even mention where Bitcoin is actually being used? For actual transactions like buying groceries or a new phone?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's something the article only touches on briefly. While trading volume gives us insight into Bitcoin's popularity as an asset, it doesn't necessarily reflect its day-to-day use. Just because someone
She's using
enjoying
Bitcoin with their euros.
it doesn't mean they're walking into a cafe and paying for their strudel with
Oh,
it.
exactly.
There's this whole other side to the Bitcoin equation we're not seeing here.
To gauge its effectiveness as a true currency, we need to consider factors like how many businesses are accepting it, how user-friendly it is for everyday transactions, and even the cultural perception of using cryptocurrency in daily life.
It's like the difference between buying a rare painting as an investment and actually using it to decorate your living room.
One is about speculation and potential future value.
The other is about practicality and integration into your everyday life.
So we've got this global snapshot of the currencies people are using to acquire Bitcoin, but the question of its actual utility as a currency remains open-ended. It's almost like we're still in the early days of a grand experiment.
And it's an experiment with extremely high stakes. The future of finance might very well be unfolding before our eyes, and whether Bitcoin plays a leading role or fades into obscurity, its impact is undeniable.
It's like we're watching the evolution of money in real time.
Man.
It's anyone's guess what the end game looks like.
But here's what really has me thinking.
We've been dissecting which fiat currencies are dominating the Bitcoin trade.
But
Does any of that even matter if Bitcoin isn't being widely used as actual money?
that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The article focuses on trading volume, but as we've discussed, that's just one piece of the puzzle. Bitcoin's success hinges on whether it can transition from a speculative asset to a practical currency,
So
even if most people are just holding on to Bitcoin as an investment.
all this trading activity still matters.
Absolutely. Every trade, every price fluctuation contributes to Bitcoin's overall presence in the global market. It creates a sort of momentum which can influence its long-term prospects, even if mainstream adoption as a currency is slow.
So it's like
Even if Bitcoin never replaces the dollar or the euro.
the fact that it's shaking things up and forcing us to rethink how we view money is significant in itself.
Exactly. We're witnessing a financial revolution, and Bitcoin, whether it ultimately thrives or not, has been a catalyst for change.
This whole deep dive has been a wild ride. We've gone from unpacking who's buying Bitcoin to questioning the very nature of currency itself. So what's the takeaway for our listener?
Should they be digging for fair change to buy a fraction of a Bitcoin?
The key takeaway here is the importance of staying informed and adaptable. The financial landscape is evolving rapidly, and clinging to outdated notions of currency or investment could be a recipe for disaster.
I like that it's not about picking a winner in the currency race, but about understanding the forces at play and making informed decisions.
It's about staying curious.
And engaged.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this. If the future of finance is less about which currency reigns supreme and more about adaptability and embracing new possibilities, what does that mean for how we approach our own financial lives? That's something to ponder. And with that, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the world of Bitcoin and fiat currencies. Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and as always, thanks for diving with us.